If I could talk to my 25-year-old self, I wouldn't tell him to hustle harder. I'd tell him to stop waiting for life to feel perfect before starting to live it. Because most of the lessons that changed me didn't come from success. They came from pain, repetition, and finally being honest with myself. I'm 31 now, and these are the 7 lessons I wish I took at 25. If you're holding on to a relationship out of fear, that's not love, it's survival. And survival always costs growth. I used to think love meant holding on no matter what. So even when relationships weren't right, I'd cling to it to try to make it work, convincing myself that my loyalty to the relationship was the same as love. When those relationships would end, I feel like my whole world would come to an end. I would be consumed by the thoughts of them and the relationship I had with them. I'd want to text them. I'd build stories about how we could fix it. I would try and sometimes successfully link back up with them because I couldn't bear the pain of ending the relationship and being alone. I don't think there was something inherently bad about trying to find a solution and work things out, but if you're dragging a situationship or a relationship that just doesn't seem to work to avoid the pain of moving on from some relationship, you're wasting your own time and energy on something you know won't work. And you're stopping yourself from growing from pain and the relationship that you had. I did this for years, getting in situationships just to avoid being alone, and I realized after those years that the relationship was just putting a band-aid on a wound that was much deeper. I still get that pain with relationships even now. It's only human, but the meaning put behind that pain is much different. That meaning behind the pain is that I remind myself, people come into your life to teach you something. It doesn't mean that love wasn't real. It just means the chapter ended. The best time to start was years ago. The next best time is right now. When I was 25, I could tell myself I couldn't start over, that it was too risky to pivot, too late to chase something new. I would think if only I could talk to my 20-year-old self and tell them it's not too late to change. And I remember when I was in my 20s in college, having those same thoughts. I spent too much time getting to where I am now. It's definitely too late to change directions and chase something new. I saw that pattern with my thinking. Every age felt too late until you realize that believing it is what makes it so. So when I turned 30, I asked my dad this question. Were there things you didn't do because you thought there wasn't enough time? And now that you can see how much time has passed, do you realize there actually was time? He said yes to both things, and that talk with him inspired me on going to Japan, quitting my job, and doing something for myself. So here I am at 30, attempting to try something new, even though I thought it was too late to change at 20 and then 25. If you're scared to change paths, remember this. Time doesn't slow down for indecision. You have time, but you don't have time to waste. Be more of a doer where it matters and less of a thinker and planner where it doesn't. Because people who grow aren't the smartest, they're the ones who kept trying and kept showing up. I seriously wish I could go back in time and change this one thing. For years, I thought clarity came from planning. I got in front of every audiobook, podcast, and YouTube video I could get my hands on. I spent so much time trying to figure the way before getting into things to try and avoid making mistakes. But one thing I've realized since slowly trying to leave that habit behind is that I could never plan enough. With every answer I got, I ended up with more questions, more things to check out and uncover, and there always seemed to be better ways of doing things. I'm not saying you should just jump in and never think or plan ever again. There are big life decisions that require thought and planning, but if you just keep thinking and thinking, you'll realize you dig yourself in a hole of doubt and uncertainty, and you'll never end up taking the leap. Figuring it out and moving forward is a process you get by actually doing the things you say you want to do. I generally think this is the one thing I've seen separate people over the years. This single thing. As young as you are, whether you think about it or not, time is your biggest asset to be doing as much as you can and learning through all those things you do. So don't be afraid to try things out. The more reps you get in, the more you grow. Just like a baby learning to walk, you fail, adjust, and try again. That's how life works too. One thing I did right in my 20s was getting serious about money early and sticking to my financial plan growing up. So I avoided a lot of mistakes early on and gained strong money management skills. And those same principles scale no matter how many zeros you add on. That discipline became one of the strongest muscles I built in my 20s. I would tell anyone in their 20s, invest money and get your high yield savings in check early on. Automate the whole thing so you don't have to think about it in the future as you get paid. Check this book out on the specifics. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit. It gave me the foundation I had. But if I could go back, I'd tell myself one thing. There's such a thing as saving too much. I was saving to buy a house in California, which takes years to do. So I stacked cash in a high yield savings account, but inflation was working against it little by little. If I look back at it, it wasn't really a mistake because it was part of my plan. But my plan changed in my late 20s. Suddenly, I had money saving up that just was sitting there and it wasn't growing had I invested it. If I could do it differently, I'd still build that savings account or that safety net, maybe 6 months or a year's worth of expenses, depending on how risk averse you are. But once I reached that safety net or savings number, I then start allocating the money I was sending to my savings account and move it to my investments instead. Surround yourself with the right people who push you to accomplish your goals and get you closer to who you want to be. One thing I found is surrounding yourself with the right people makes accomplishing goals that much easier. At 25, I tried to stay disciplined while being around people who didn't share my goals. But it was hard. Their priorities didn't match up with mine. Their schedules and habits clashed in opposite directions of what I wanted to do and accomplish. I thought I could outwill my environment and push through it, but I couldn't. If you want to grow, move closer to people who live the way you want to live, or are the type of people you want to be like. Not just the dreamers, but the doers. Their habits, their lifestyle, values, and mindset will have a direct impact on yours. Find the places that challenge you. Cities, communities, groups where people are already living the way you want. Because consistency and discipline are a lot easier when you're always exposed and surrounded by people living the way you want to live. Feeling bad isn't the problem. Staying there is. The faster you reset, the faster life moves forward again. Everyone has their ups and downs in lives. People can be great and look steady when life is good, but everything changes when life doesn't go so well. But what separates people is how quickly they reset when life isn't going so well. Back then, I'd fall into ruts for months, and I've talked about it in my channel. Feeling like a spectator in my own life, feeling bad about how behind I felt, and then numbing out with video games, movies, and food. I would tell myself, I'm just taking a break. But really, I was just lost in my own pity. Now, I'm not saying you can't have time to process bad times, and it's okay to rest, but you don't need to stay there for weeks and months. So that's why it's important to reset as fast as possible. I know it's easier said than done. Just feel better isn't the advice I'm trying to give to you. That doesn't work. You need to reset and move your way out of your pity, doom, and gloom. The better and quicker you can reset, the faster you'll be able to go back towards working towards the life you want, and the faster you can get back to building momentum for that change. Now, even when I slip, I bounce back quicker because I remind myself feeling bad isn't the problem, staying there is. Honesty may cost you people, but dishonesty costs you yourself. In my early 20s, I was a people pleaser. I'd keep things inside, try to make others feel good, and avoid conflict, even if it meant swallowing what I actually felt. At the time, I thought I was being kind or maybe even stoic. At 25, I was just trying to meet people, make friends, and gain my own independence in the world. Now, I don't chase acceptance, I chase authenticity. That's what I misunderstood about masculinity back then. I thought being a man meant holding it all in. I wanted to look composed, unfazed, in control. What I didn't realize then is that real stoicism isn't about ignoring how you feel. It's about not being ruled by it. A stoic still feels everything. They just don't act on the emotional impulse. They allow space and act in alignment with their values. But I wasn't doing that. I was pretending things didn't bother me, especially in relationships. When something hurt, I'd process it alone, bottle it up. I tell myself it's fine, don't make it a big deal, because I thought that made me strong and masculine in the relationship. And I didn't want to seem emotional or weak, but what I was really doing was building misunderstanding, resentment in the relationship, and building distance between us. It made me look calm on the outside, but disconnected on the inside. And over time, that disconnect turned into resentment, both in myself and in the people I cared about. The big turning point came when I lost someone I truly valued, not because we didn't care about each other, but because I wasn't honest about what I needed. That pain taught me something important, that avoiding conflict doesn't create peace in a relationship. It just delays truth. And eventually, I realized something else. Even when I tried to please everyone, people still didn't like me. So if I'm going to be disliked and misunderstood either way, I'd rather be misunderstood and disliked for being myself. My relationships feel lighter, deeper, and more authentic because I'm finally showing up as someone who I am, not who I think I need to be. If I could summarize all of it, love, work, money, mindset, it comes down to this. You're never really behind. You're just learning at your own speed. At 25, I thought success was about control. And at 30, I realized it's about trust. I don't have everything figured out, but I'm finally living instead of waiting to be ready. And if there's one thing I'd leave you with, it's this. Don't wait to become the person you already feel calling from inside you. Start walking towards them now. This chapter of my Rebuild series ends here, but it's not really an ending. It's the start of something I've been quietly building behind the scenes. I can't wait to see you on the next one.